We are going to go ahead and start now, if everybody's ready. And don't forget, anytime you want to, you can turn a question in. Halfway through the forum, you think of something, it's not too late. Just write it down and bring it down here to Ken, right there. All right. So we're going to start off with the introductions. And Monty, we will start with you. And according to my timetable here, you have 2 minutes to introduce your candidacy.
All right, again, thank you for having us, and thank you for creating the forum. My name is Monty Osterman. I live on the north side of Racine on Wisconsin Street with my lovely wife, Mary, and our daughter, Emily, is no longer living at the house, but she visits a lot, and we really like having her around. And my soon-to-be son-in-law, Justin, they are here today. Thank you for coming. I am running for the Racine City Council because I feel that I have the experience and the knowledge to create change within the city. We do this in small increments. We do it as part of a team, and I have learned great skills in team building while working on the county board as a county board supervisor for the last 5 years. My candidacy has been long coming. I've thought about this for many years. I feel like now is a good time to do this. Racine needs extra leadership, and I think that we're in a very exciting time, and I want to be part of moving the city forward, and that is why I am running for city council.
Thank you. Okay. Eric, over to you for the next.
Okay, I'm not a professional, so I needed to write down my introduction. Hello, I'd like to thank the Racine Taxpayer Association and Racine County I for this opportunity. My name's Eric Elmore, and I've been married for 16 years. I have 5 adult children. Can you hear me? Okay, I have lived at the corner of Shoup and Laird for 17 years. I've been employed at Wisconsin Metal Products as a tool and die maker for 30 years. I want to be your 7th District Alderman because I feel there's a disconnect between the citizens and some of their aldermen. As I've been campaigning through the 7th District, I have met many people that had complaints and wanted to see if I could do something about this or that. And I said, well, I'm not an alderman yet. So I think that goes to show that people want access to be able to know you, know the things you plan. If elected to hold it, I want to hold quarterly listening sessions at different locations throughout the 7th District. In these listening sessions, I can better determine what the 7th District taxpayers' complaints and needs are to better serve the people. I feel my job as a 7th District Alderman is to represent them at meetings first and foremost, to be their voice. In closing, we need first-class services, schools, police, fire, housing, garbage pickups, streets fixed and plowed, street lights. That's what makes a city great. That's what makes people stay here.
Alderman DeHaan, I'm president of City Council presently. My reason for running is that I've been a person of vision. I have 42 years in public office, 32 years as a county supervisor, and 10 years as an alderman. What Eric had talked about has been, people have very good access to me. I give them my cell phone number so they can access me anytime. And how do I stay in this office this long? Because I return all my phone calls, whether they're trivia or not, because it's important to the person that called me. And we just passed a resolution in November, December to have, I guess you would say, sewer PAC, which is Southeastern Regional Planning, study better access to the city. One of the problems we have, why people don't come to the city, is they don't have easy access. Highway 20 is not easy access, and I think after that resolution was passed, sewer PAC said they would study it in 2015 and bring it back to us with their recommendations. I think that's important. As far as the street lights, that issue went away a long time ago. If We Energies would have put in the high efficiency lights in all their poles, that none of the lights would have had to come out. They told us it was their business of selling electricity. And I think it was important that we as elected officials represent everybody equally. And if there is a problem with lighting, call us, because if there's something we can do, we'll share it. One of the things that I'd like to tell you is that anything on a wooden pole is We Energies. Anything on concrete or metal is the city's. So if you call you see any of them having a problem, call us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Melissa, you're next. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for letting us be here tonight. My name's Melissa Lemke. I live on the north side of Racine on 3 Mile with my partner. I've lived here for almost a decade, and there are 3 reasons that I think that I am best qualified for the job. One is my deep roots in the area, the second is my leadership experience, and the third is service. I have very deep roots in Wisconsin. I grew up in Kimberly, which is a town that's very blue collar, not unlike Racine. Went to school at UW La Crosse and UW Milwaukee and got my master's degree. And as soon as I came down to Racine, about a decade ago, got very involved with service. I'm currently on the Racine Parks Board and have tried to give greatly back to my community. I think I also demonstrate a great deal of leadership experience. I've been involved with Big Brothers Big Sisters, mentoring at church. I've been on a church council board, interfaith older adult caregivers board, and so really care deeply about leading in those types of positions that are able to help people. And then also, I have a great heart for service. I really love getting out into the district, meeting the people, hearing what they have to say, and being deeply involved in my community and giving back.
Thank you. Eddie, 2 minutes.
Thank you. First, I want to remind everyone that aldermen in the city of Racine are nonpartisan. In my time on the council, it didn't matter whether you were Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, or Martian. It matters that you care about people. It matters that you have ideas. It matters that you want to provide oversight of city government. To me, the election in the 15th district comes down to 2 things: commitment and creativity. Commitment begins with service. During my campaign, I visited every apartment building that wasn't locked and every home in the 15th district. I could have obtained the likely voter lists and only visited those homes, like my challenger. But I visited every single home in the 15th district because I represent everyone in the 15th district. I have not accepted a single penny in donations for my campaign and have used just over $200 to produce literature that I have delivered myself. My challengers raised over $4,000 from donors in cities including Madison, Milwaukee, and even Grinnell, Iowa. I work for the 15th district. I make constituents' problems my problems, whether it's sewer issues or loud neighbors. I helped save the trees on Ruby Avenue, and I assisted the residents on Erie Street during the fire. I was invited to and attend the daily police briefings at least once a month to talk about ideas and citizen concerns. Public safety is one of my greatest concerns in this city. I fought for transparency and accountability in city government. I had deep questions about the Mound Avenue and Machinery Row projects, and I voted against the roundabout. Ooh, 15 seconds. I fought the restrictive business sign ordinance and came to a compromise. I am a strong advocate for the hospitality center and the homeless situation in this city. We need to address that immediately. And I'll talk about creativity during my closing statement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the first question goes to you, Monty. And here it is. Does the city have enough cops and firefighters? You have 1 minute, by the way, for this one.
All right, the question is, do we have enough public safety personnel overall, right? I believe right now that we do. I recently had an experience where I had to call emergency services, and the response was swift, the response was adequate, the response was actually very good, and I spent some time with the fire lieutenant why I felt that it was so very good. I feel like that if we were to have to that would be a problem. That would be an issue. So what do you want me to do here?
Is it coming off?
Okay.
Switch back.
At any rate, based upon personal experience, I feel that we do have adequate staff on the fire department. Having interacted with the police department quite often, I feel like that their response has been swift and professional, and I feel like that we do have adequate staff there.
Okay, thank you. Eric, same question. Does the city have enough Firefighters and cops, 60 seconds.
Without knowing numbers, exactly how many officers, how many firemen we have, I've never checked into that. I haven't had any complaints at all through my walking around and asking people. I'd have to say yes, I think we have an adequate amount as of right now.
Thank you. Ray, your turn for 60 seconds.
I believe we do have enough, but response times for paramedics is considerably higher than I'd like. I chaired a paramedic study committee back in '76 on the county board, and the city didn't choose to go that way until in the '80s. And if you are not, if somebody didn't try to resuscitate you, that 7 minutes you're brain dead. So it's important that we relocate sometime in the future our rescue squads. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa, your turn.
Yeah, I would echo what Alderman DeHaan has said. I think overall there's a presence that you can see on the streets of police and fire. I think everyone is very proud of our police and fire departments, and generally we have enough public safety personnel. I have talked in the 15th district to 3 different people who are public safety personnel themselves, and they echoed Ray's concerns about paramedics and said particularly that on the north side response times are higher. And so I'd be interested in finding out a little bit more about that and considering how to staff differently, perhaps the paramedic side of things.
Thank you. Eddie, yours for 60 seconds.
You know, some police protocols require 2 or 3 officers to show up if there's a call for a burglar alarm or something like that. So it depends on what you want for police services. Some of those calls are delayed because we don't have enough people on staff. So for normal patrols and everything, that's fine. But if we have critical situations like that, we certainly can't cut any more from the police. On fire, our response times have gone up. Sometimes it's a matter of an average of 10 seconds. Anybody that doesn't think 10 seconds matters, try having a heart attack, or try turning on one of those YouTube videos and watch a Christmas tree catch on fire and see the difference that 10 seconds makes. So, at the very least, we shouldn't cut any more from public safety in any way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you pass the microphone over here to Eric. Sure. What can be done about the excessive time it takes for a new business to get a permit to do business in the city?
That's a question that I've been writing down and asking myself, actually. I think we need to simplify the process, evidently. Now, that's easy to say. I think I've been through a process once of applying for a bar license. Bad idea. But anyways, I went through it then, and I seen what it took. And it seemed like I wasn't getting answers anywhere. They send me to the health department. I go down there. They say, well, be careful what you buy. There's no sheets, really, that says... I think we should have the businesses that are in working now, bars, restaurants, other small businesses, make them maybe checklist sheets or something. The sheet that they gave me down at City Hall really didn't help me at all. So that's what I would like to dig into to find out what the reasoning is.
Thank you. Ray, you've been around a while. For 60 seconds. In 60 seconds, tell us how we're going to cut down this time.
One of the things that we need to do is streamline our system. Right now, it gerrymanders all over the place, and Eric was right on that one. Because I've seen people call me, and I tell them, I said, you have to go to this person, that person. And it ends up where it's just like jumping over a fence, and they keep you going back and forth over that fence. And we need to streamline it, and there's a way to do that. Just needs to get our department heads together and say, how can we do this thing better? Thank you.
Absolutely. So I will echo what the past 2 gentlemen said. In order to streamline the permitting process, I think what needs to happen is when you run for office, they give you a great packet that tells you step by step exactly what you should do and who you should contact. I think we need to do something similar for people who are getting small business permits or business permits. So it's very clear the steps you need to take, who you need to contact, when they're in the office, so that it makes it very easy, and hopefully you can do it in quick succession.
Staff and personnel at the city have to have the same sense of urgency that the small business owners have. These folks take a personal and professional risk every day, not only with their own finances, but employing other people. One of the things that I would focus on is revisiting this entire conditional use permit process. Maybe we should just change the zoning situation. A place can be zoned retail, but you still have to go to the Politburo to talk about all these different things, and then it's yay or nay on whether this fits into the vision of that particular area. I think maybe we should talk about changes in zoning and make that more upfront so that people can make their own decisions. And I think we have to streamline the paperwork process. It should not come down to design review at the end and have process delayed by 6 and sometimes 8 months. Have to do better job of taking the same risk that the small business owners are taking. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. The question is, what can be done about the excessive time that it takes to get the new business permit? Each one of these candidates is right, and each one of them are wrong. The process cannot be piecemealed. We can't change just zoning. We can't change just a permit application. It's an entire process top to bottom through development. And what can be done is what I've been talking about through my entire campaign, lean government initiative. It's an entire process of continuity. You go through the entire thing from your mayor to your city council, your department heads, your managers, your supervisors, and your frontline workers to create an entirely new process that increases efficiencies and eliminates waste. And a lot of this is wasted time that we talk about. In government, the best thing that we sell is time. We sell services. We provide services to constituents. And if we can decrease our time through a continuous improvement process like a lean government initiative, that's how we can change that for new businesses coming in.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question starts with you, Ray.
Okay.
This is an interesting one. Is it really the city's responsibility as a government body to solve the emergency shelter situation in Racine?
I'd say yes.
Okay.
And one of the reasons is that whether they're homeless or not, they're our citizens. And whether it takes a combination of county and the county board and city council to work together and get that resolved. Halo's in place, doing a fine job. And some of those folks are not welcome there because they don't abide by the rules. And when you provide a service to help these folks, somewhere along the line we need to step up and find a place and work with the county government to get it done, because without that, these folks will continue to suffer. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa, your turn. Is it the government's responsibility?
Thank you. So I work with a Faith Works Council who does work with hunger and homelessness. And I believe that it's partially the city's responsibility to solve the homelessness problem, but I feel that they're one player. The city alone does not have the resources to solve the problem. So I feel that the city needs to have representation and be a player at the table, but I also think folks like the Community of Care, who are a group of nonprofits, need to be at the table. Obviously also the county, individual citizens. It's going to take a whole lot more than just the city. So does the city have a role? Absolutely, but the city is not the only group responsible for solving the problem.
Thank you. Eddie, yours for 60 seconds.
Thank you. That's not completely correct about Halo. There are all sorts of criteria that can get people kicked out or not allow them to get in the first place. I'm an overnight volunteer. Well, I was an overnight volunteer at the Hospitality Center. I'm an advocate for the homeless in this area. And I just told somebody the story about there's a difference between starving in the midst of nothing and starving in the midst of plenty of food. We have around 50% unoccupied beds in the shelters here, not including the Hospitality Center. We need to do a better job of directing resources and personnel at the problem that we know exists. Now, the people who don't have a place to stay, now that the Hospitality Center closed, as of last night, I don't know where they are right now. I wish they had some place to stay overnight tonight. Let's get them the services that are already available and let them stay somewhere.
I'm Vice Chairman of the Racine County Health and Human Development Committee, and we deal with homelessness issues, we deal with mental health issues a lot. And the two always, well, almost always, go hand in hand. The first thing that needs to happen is more focus on mental health awareness and mental health services. This will help curb the need to serve the homeless. I do feel that the city and the county and the state, everybody should work as a family together. Ms. Lemke is correct. We need to all cooperate together to tackle this problem, because it is a nationwide problem as well as, especially in Racine, a regional problem. You know, we can't We can't turn our back on this because when we do, it just costs us more money. Dealing with the problem up front in a proactive fashion eliminates future costs, and that's what we need to do. But look, we have a problem coming up with the proposed cuts in the state budget with the Health and Human Services Department. So we're going to be dealing with that too.
Thank you. Eric, you're on for 60 seconds.
Yeah, real easy. Yeah, the city, the community, the county, everybody has to be involved. Is it going to be our money, the city's money? I'm not so sure about that, but if they have any money to go for it, everybody has to get involved. I don't have the answers to that, no. Hospitality center seemed like a good thing. I don't know why we can't find more money for that somewhere. We can find money for everything else. $4,000 in donations, classic example, but yet we don't have a homeless facility. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Melissa, you want to grab that microphone? You're next up to start the question. Here it is. I-794 will be in the future extended. It will be extended in the future. Which route through Racine would you recommend? Memorial Drive, West Boulevard, the old train route, or Highway 31?
That's a great question. I think the first thing that you should do is talk to the people in the area around that are going to be impacted, because if there's one thing that I know people have very strong feelings about, demonstrated by the roundabout, about where those things go. Initially, it seems like Highway 31 would probably be the best option out of all of those because it's a very direct route to downtown and to businesses. But absolutely, you have to talk about the people and businesses who are going to be impacted. But
Thank you. Eddie, your turn.
Somebody needs to start with a SWOT analysis. That's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What would be the best route to run that through the city? There are also environmental issues and other things. We need to talk to the engineers both at the state level and at the local level to come up with the best decision. I am neither of those particular people, so I don't want to take a guess right now. But I do know that Racine is limited in attracting new employers, new manufacturing here because of 20 minutes. It is a 20-minute commute from downtown Racine to the interstate, and that is doubled to make it 40 minutes if that driver has to make a return trip. That's DOT regulations. I forget exactly how many hours they are a day, but a trucking company loses a significant percentage of their travel on just going from Racine to the highway, and they can't accept that. So the highway has to come through here somehow, and exactly the route it's going to take, we should find out.
Okay, Monty?
Thank you. I have received some preliminary information on this. The studies that are being done are, again, very preliminary, so you have to remember that a lot of information is not available yet. It takes a long time, many years, to study this situation and try and find out what is the most efficient method of doing this. Highway 31, from what I understand, could be problematic because it's spanning two municipalities, or actually several municipalities, and there has to be a lot of intergovernmental cooperation there. West Boulevard, some of the early indications are that there may be a lot of extra expense with acquiring property. Right now, the Memorial Drive location seems to be, to me, the most feasible to at least study in depth, simply because of properties that would have to be purchased and how far you can take those easements. Plus, the majority of it would be in the city of Racine, where you would have a more controlled environment for getting the governmental cooperation.
Thank you. Eric, your turn for 60
I think that's what we're going to need. I think the state's going to have to decide it. The DOT said they weren't going to put the roundabout in, but we decided for it. I don't think the city should be dealing in anything to worry about what way it's going in, maybe approve it if they want to, but I think the state, they're the smart guys. They're the ones that know where the roads are supposed to come in and go out, what are the easiest routes. I don't, especially if we spend money on it. We don't need to spend money on finding out if what road is going to work. State should tell us.
Okay, Ray, what's your opinion of this? 60 seconds.
Well, we have a study going on right now for better access to the city. And that was a proposal I made and the council passed back in November or December. And my idea was to run 4 lanes on KR down to 32 and 4 lanes on 4 Mile down to 32. And Sewerpack says, pass the resolution, we'll study it. So in 2015, they will come back with a recommendation. And it's not rocket scientists, but they said they could understand the need. I said, well, why are people not locating here? Because they don't have easy access. And one of the way to do that is get them in here. And Highway 20 is not the way to go because it takes a long time to do it. So I think we're looking forward to what Sewer Pack comes back with. It's a win-win. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Pass that on down to Eddie for the next question. Here it is, Mr. Deal. What is your opinion of machinery row type of projects? Should we do more of these, or is this an activity for private sector investments rather than taxpayer money?
I argued quite a bit about this. I think that we need to have more upfront cooperation with developers, not have them near the end like we seem to consistently do. And I mean, we have economic development issues. We need to try to kickstart some of these things in the city. As I said, I've had deep questions about that particular project. My job as an alderman is to provide transparency, and I think that makes the project better. It makes it better for the taxpayers, it makes it better for everybody that's involved. I do think that my peripheral enterprise zone concept that would surround these TIF districts, that it would allow assessments, if we can do it that way, to be locked for a period of, let's say, 5 years, to allow those businesses to take the risk to grow, to hire more people, and to attract new businesses into the area might be the missing part of that whole TIF district concept. But we'll see how that goes at the state level. It's up there now being discussed. Thank you.
I am very much in favor of the Machinery Row project and projects of that type. The question is whether this should be private versus public funds. Folks, I'm sorry, the days of public funded projects only and privately funded projects only are over. And, all across the country, local municipalities and governments are working with nonprofits, they're working with private investors and entrepreneurs to create projects to move cities forward. And it's almost as if projects get auctioned off these days throughout municipalities. A project comes to Racine by means of discussion, by means of recruitment, by means of a lot of cheerleading. And you know, when somebody decides to locate a project here, it's because they see an advantage for themselves and for the citizens. And the city sees an advantage also. It becomes a public-private partnership. So there is no such thing as public versus private anymore with these projects. I'm very much in favor of them because they do increase the tax base and do move our city forward.
Thank you, Monty. Okay. Eric, your turn for 60 seconds.
I didn't like Machinery Row. I'm sure it's a great project, but as some other aldermen said, you know, is the time right now? Do we need it right now? I think there's other things we needed to spend money on. I realize the tax base goes up in the states, less funds. We need this new construction, this new stuff. But, you know, bigger isn't always better. Sometimes it's just good to just stay where you're at. Make sure you get the world-class facilities. You know, maybe they're going to come, maybe they're not. Now, what do we want? Do we want this city to be 130,000 like Milwaukee? Is that what we want? We want to fill up every part of river and our lakefront with high rises? You know, I don't want to live in a city like that. I think the quaintness of 76 or whatever we've got 1,000 people now is pretty good. I didn't really like it at 95. Now, if we bring all the stuff in, it's going to help tax base. But again, it brings in more crime, brings in more people, more services we need, more firemen, more cops. It's kind of a never-ending battle. Be happy with what we have sometimes.
Thank you. Ray, 1 minute.
Machinery Row. The thing out there is if you do nothing, you get nothing. And if you're going to take the $62 to $65 million investment, the city is borrowed them $4.5 million. That's not free. They're paying taxes every quarter back to us, and the principal and interest. So if you have to be a little bit visionary, what's going to happen? Those buildings have sat down there for over 40 years doing nothing. And here comes a gentleman that would invest in our future of our lakefront and in that area and do something with it that hasn't been done in over 40 years. Is manufacturing ever going to come back? No, probably not in that way. But small business, yes. We're hoping to pull them in and support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Finish up with you, Melissa.
Great. So as I go around, I think the biggest challenges in Racine relate to the cluster of unemployment, jobs, needing to grow jobs, and poverty. And just yesterday in the paper it was announced that WEDC gave $1 million to help clean up the Machinery Row area, and that it was projected to create 100 jobs in the near term and over 500 jobs in the long term. I don't think that Racine, given our unemployment rate, can afford to turn down 500 jobs in the middle of the city. And so I do think we need to continue to look at projects like that. I do also agree that that we are in the age of public and private partnerships, and so they should be funded with both public and private dollars.
Okay, thank you. That finishes up our first round. We're going to do the next round now. Every candidate started a question, so we're going to do it in reverse. And Eddie, we're going to start with yours. And by the way, don't forget, if a question comes up in your mind now, it's not too late. You can get it on down to our screeners, and we can still get it in. So here's your question, Eddie. Should the city support the Racine water utility in reducing the REQ, that's a resident equivalency fees?
They shouldn't raise it. I don't know that it can be reduced. We have a lot of debt down there, and that's part of the issue. I don't know that they can ever realistically go away, but they shouldn't be increased any more than they already are.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, your turn.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes, should the city support the Racine water utility in reducing the REQ fees, the resident equivalency fees?
I honestly would have to look into that more. I don't know a great deal about the resident equivalency fees, and so I would need to look into that.
Okay, thank you. Ray?
Well, to start out with, we have the best water on the Great Lakes. And the reason we have it is because we have a membrane plant. It's not forced through, it's drip through. And if the people need and want services, I expect them to pay for it. I expect to pay for it. But as far as increasing, just for the sake of increasing, I wouldn't support that. But I can tell you this, that it's important that we still maintain the best water on the Great Lakes. And the only way you can do it, if you need to increase to protect that, let's do it. Otherwise, not.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
Yeah, I would never want to increase fees on people, especially, fixed income people. But again, like Ray said, I got to agree. Our water's great. We're talking about water projects and stuff like that. Somebody's got to pay for it at some point. So I say if it has to be for clean water, good water, so be it.
Thank you. Finish up with you, Monty.
All right, so the residential equivalency connection fee has to do with how much water you're going to use on a new project. The idea was that development would come along and growth would pay for growth. So those people that were developing projects out toward the interstate or outside the city or even within the city would pay for the infrastructure costs based upon how much water they were going to be using. Now, that is a good idea in theory when you're doing large developments, and I don't see any real way to reduce that because the debt has to be paid, and unless another municipality getting water from us is ready to pick up the bonds on those debts, the Racine is stuck with them, so we have to pay for it somehow. So they have the REQ fees. Now, what I would like to see is an incentive to businesses that come into town, it's in the city limits, and are creating jobs. They should have one credit for every job created within the city. They'll have that credit on their REQ fees.
Okay,
that will help reduce the cost and increase business.
Thank you, Monty. All right, now the next question starts with you, Melissa. You want to get that microphone on down there? Here we go. This is a good one. Do you favor, this came from the Landlord Association, by the way, their forum. Do you favor the police-escorted, multi-departmental inspections of apartment buildings consisting of 8 or more units in which the owner is not notified?
That is a very good question. Thank you for asking. I think that it's important to be transparent and also notify people when there's an inspection, but I also do favor inspections. I think One of the things I've heard loud and clear from people in the district is the fact that they want accountability for how the apartments are kept up. I've gone in them to myself and seen the health and safety issues. I personally was the one who contacted the city after the fire on Erie to talk about the health code violations. And so I definitely am strongly in favor of inspection to making sure people have adequate health and safety who are living in those apartments and might not be able to advocate for those types of safety and health issues. But I also think there should be at least some sort of notification.
Okay, thank you. Ray, your turn.
I agree. Should be some notification on it because it's just like somebody sneaking in on you. But I think what we've seen is like in Jacato Drive, there's a guy bought 9 buildings for over $2 million. And he's rehabbing them totally. He's torn everything out of them, rehabbing them. And I asked him, "Do you have a problem with the city doing inspections on these?" He said, "Absolutely not." But he said, "I'd like to be notified," and I agree with him. So if it becomes an issue, and it apparently is an issue, I support that.
Thank you. Eric, your turn.
Yeah, for health and safety, I think they should be warned if it's criminal activities that they feel is going on in there. I don't think they should have to get a pre-approval.
I think you have to look at why that's happening. I think we have a number of out-of-town or out-of-state landlords who don't take care of their properties. I do feel it's important to notify landlords of the inspection. As far as the police coming along, I think that if they're looking at a situation, as Mr. Moore has indicated, that there's a crime occurring, or at least a suspicion of it, that the police presence probably is appropriate for safety reasons. But again, I do feel landlords should be notified that the inspection is happening.
Thank you. Eddie, your turn for 1 minute.
Just as a renter has to be notified by the owner before somebody goes into their apartment for whatever reason, unless it's an emergency, there's no reason why owners shouldn't be notified in advance of an inspection. However, I had to deal with that building on Erie that burned that time. The owner lived out of town. There was a bit of a language barrier, and to try to get answers from her for an inspection was very, very difficult. And I think at some point you've given the owner enough notice and say, look, now we have to go in. But I think they should be given a reasonable amount of notice before you go in for an inspection. That's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Okay, the next question goes to you, Ray.
Okay. Ready?
What is the role of the Common Council in regards to the mayor? Do you feel the council serves as a check and balance?
Absolutely. I think that that's our position as elected officials. If we disagree with the mayor, we can veto by majority, and he can override by 3/4 of the vote. So without elected officials and the mayor, we don't always see eye to eye. And at this point, I would tell you this, that we don't always agree with the mayor, believe it or not, and we work out our issues in committee, and if we don't, it ends up on the council floor. But I like the checks and balances, and I think we are that.
Thank you. Okay, Eric?
What was it?
Here it is. What is the role of the Common Council in regards to the mayor? Do you feel the council serves as a check and balance?
Definitely. Something I didn't hear though is, what I talked about in my introduction, people. Where's the people equation in that? We're talking about council and mayors. Well, the council should be bringing the ideas of the people to the council meetings and letting the mayor, listen to what the people have to say. The mayor will bring his projects to the council. Then the council should maybe go talk with the people and the constituents. We spend a lot of time on everything else, and it does take a long time for this stuff, but I think that stuff can be done very quickly.
Good. Thank you. Monty, your turn for 1 minute.
Well, the whole system of checks and balances is what this country was founded on, so that no one entity had greater power than the other. And, you know, the council is certainly the legislative body, the policy-making body. Some policy can be introduced by the mayor. We have the veto. We have the override of the veto. We have checks and balances in place so that, again, one entity is not more powerful than the other. I do not feel that the city council answers to the mayor. I do not feel the mayor answers to the city council, other than to implement the policy as the executive officer that this council puts into place. It's very important to have the debate between the two. So yes, the checks and balances are there, and I think they are part of our entire system that needs to stay there.
Okay, Eddie, over to you for 1 minute.
Anyone who's watched me for the last 2 years at any point knows that I am an independent voice from the mayor and from other members of the city council. I work with people when I can. I work around them when I have to. The city council needs to be completely independent from the mayor. The city council needs to be completely independent from the staff. The city council needs to be completely independent from public safety, needs to be completely independent from everyone. We are your eyes and ears and voice for each resident of each district. So it's a pretty simple answer. I guess that was a long way of saying, yes, we should be completely independent from the mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Melissa, 1 minute.
I believe the question was whether or not city council serves as checks and balances to the mayor. And I think that's a fairly easy question. Every level of government has a system of checks and balances, and as they've all very eloquently explained, there is a way to veto and override the veto related to the mayor, and I absolutely think that one body of government should serve as a check and balance to the other, so yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next one we start with Eric. And you started that one, right, Ray? Okay. Okay, Eric, here it is. According to the proposed 2015 budget, Racine's budget is $83 million with a debt level of over $100 million. How do we overcome this and get that changed?
Well, I'm going to take the high road here, I guess, and say that, you know, my experience with the city government is nil. I'm going to be a rookie, just like everybody that ran for it at one point was a rookie. You're going to have to get up to speed. I'm going to have to find out what councils, where the money's going, what the money's used for, and we go over it, and it's, again, checks and balances. If you don't have the money, you can't spend it. So eventually, if we spend less than we take in, eventually we should be able to get out of a hole at some point.
Thank you. Monty, your turn. How do we get out of this mess here? 83 million versus 100.
You yourself said that you were not going to ask a question that took more than 60 seconds to answer.
Yeah. This was a bit of a tough one, yes.
It's really not an $83 million budget. It's a $200 million budget. This is the budget page right here from the city budget that was approved for 2015. It's an $83 million levy. The rest of the money is made up in fees and special revenues, enterprise funds, various things. You can go through the whole budget and find that. So it puts our it puts the debt expenditure at about 14.5% to 15% of the budget, which is actually below the counties. So you know, I'm not a big one to carry a lot of debt, but in this day and age, debt is necessary to create your infrastructure projects, and we have to do that in this city to grow the tax base, to create a better housing and commercial projects so that we can attract people to sell our city and again, increase the tax base, increase the services. We do need to manage our debt better so that we can increase our bond rating to get a lower interest rate. That's one thing that kind of concerns me is when we get in trouble on our bond rating, because it does cost more.
Okay, thank you on that, Monty. Okay, Eddie, over to you.
One of my dreams is to have 3 new sister cities. Yes, 3 new sister cities for the city of Racine. Sturtevant, Mount Pleasant, and Caledonia. We need to get along with our neighbors better for a couple of reasons. There are a lot of opportunities for saving money and paying down our debt through joint fire, joint police. There's a lot of possibilities for savings there. I would like to see a memorandum of understanding for development with those communities in Racine so that their development becomes our development, to increase business development, increase growth of business, small business and large business, and drive more revenue growth and get that debt paid down. I think that's the crux of our success. Kenosha's success has been to annex the land all the way out to the I, and everybody talks about that. We need to not annex, but we need to get along with our friends a lot better than we do, because a lot of savings there and a lot of opportunities there. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa, your turn.
Thanks. So how do we begin to deal with a debt that's 14 cents on the dollar? One of the ways that we do that was already discussed. It's projects like Machinery Row that will bring in business and create jobs and thus increase the tax base. If you have more money to increase the tax base, we can pay off the debt. Another thing, much as Mr. Osterman said, is you have to carefully consider what is an investment that will bring back money in the long term and what is just spending. And so I think we need to work on more projects, much like the Machinery Row project, where when the money goes out, it's an investment and it will come back in eventually.
Thank you. Finish up with you on this one, Ray.
All right. One of the things that we have done is we've increased our efficiency. We have not filled positions. We've actually technically not laid anybody off, but we just haven't filled them. And then when we go to replace them, we don't fill them until sometimes 6 months later. And that's a cost savings for us. That's the only way that we can save money. The continued battering by our state government by cutting our funds that are due us to in excess of $4 million is creating a real problem for us. This winter we cross-train our DPW people. So if we had a major snowfall, we could handle it. We've done that throughout our community, and in order to get this debt down, we just have to be very religious and proactive on keeping it from being spent unless we absolutely have to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Monty, the last question goes to you. People have been voting with their feet, and Racine has had taxpayers leaving the city for years. How do we stop the exodus? 1 minute. Give them that microphone there.
So, what, voting with their feet?
Voting with their feet, yeah. Leaving their, actually it's
By
been for
leaving
decades.
Racine. By leaving Racine. I mean, well, you know, some of that is just the natural curvature of the earth. You know, people want to expand, they want to move out. There was the whole exodus out of the cities, and now we're actually seeing nationwide and worldwide and people coming back to the cities and back to an urban environment, which is why projects like Machinery Row take off. One thing that I think is important is engaging young people from the beginning. One of the things that I've talked about during my council. Now, I was involved in creating the Youth and Governance Program for Racine County, where we engage youth, and the entire idea there is that it brings them back into the community, makes them more apt to come back and bring their intelligence and their talents back to the community after college. We have to start young and impress upon them the importance of being in the community right away.
Okay, thank you. Eddie, your next minute, the next minute is yours.
Taxes are high, employment is poor. The high taxes make people leave town that are on fixed incomes, retired folks, they go elsewhere. When people are shopping for a place to live, they look at other communities in Wisconsin, they look at Racine. Taxes are high. Unless they're bringing their own business with them, the employment prospects are low. We need to do a better job of encouraging small business growth and development here, for one thing, to attract jobs, to attract people, to attract families. We need to get more revenue from things like the last question that I answered in order to drive down debt, in order to decrease our taxes. That's the only thing that's going to make people decide to stay or to move here. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa, how do we stop the exodus? 1 minute.
That's a great question. So I actually prefer to look at our assets and what's coming in. And while I was working at the Public Policy Forum, I studied regional income migration trends, so this exact thing. And one of the things that we notice is that people tend to be coming up more from the south, so Kenosha in the Chicago area. So unlike having 3 sister cities surrounding us, I would encourage much closer partnership with our neighbors to the south, because they are the folks who tend to bring the income toward Racine and the southeast Wisconsin area. So I believe we need to encourage closer partnerships with those communities.
Thank you. Ray, 1 minute.
Repeat the question.
The question is, people have been voting with their feet, and Racine has had taxpayers leaving the city for years. How do we stop the exodus?
By bringing in small businesses and using the lakefront where our boats are. That's a $22 million development that the county put in years ago. We have another 100 boats coming in there that weren't there last year. Those bring people and dollars into our community. As far as people leaving, that's their choice. Because we used to have a lot of industry in here, people stayed here. As the industry left, the people left. And consequently, we have to be encouraging our small business people and be active, and that's what our mayor has done in the past, is bring people in and see if we can't encourage them to locate here rather than leave our community. And I think we're on the right path. It's just a matter to continue it. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, finish up with you.
So basically, brain drain is what we're suffering from. I've lost a lot of my families, excuse me, has left also. I've lost a lot of them because of just for that. I think Wisconsin has lost a lot of people. I don't think it's just Racine. I think a lot of places are suffering. Jobs are great. The small businesses are fantastic. It makes the community vibrant, but does it bring people here for a destination? You got to get paid to want to live in that community. I mean, I can't come here and live at $9 an hour. It just isn't going to work. Are we going to get jobs that are going to pay these huge amounts of money that want to pay? I don't know. We've got Johnson's Wax. I think the key is I've heard it said before, we need some sort of transportation system. I know it costs money, but the high-speed rail I thought was going to be great if it would have been statewide. I could work in La Crosse, actually, and live in Racine. You could work in Madison. You could go to Chicago and work, go to Kenosha, go different places. Driving takes a long time. You can't go very far. Milwaukee, and that's where we're losing a lot of my young friends. They work in Milwaukee, they move to Milwaukee.
Okay, thank you very much. And that concludes the question and answer period. We're going to give each candidate now 1 minute to tell you why you should vote for them. Eddie, it starts with you.
Thank you. I talked about commitment and creativity. This is the creativity part. I've judged the fast pitch and the women's business competitions to provide expertise, but also to stay in touch with entrepreneurs in the area who might become the next Racine employer. I came up with the idea for the emergency text messaging system after the tragic death of Ruben Santos, and that system will be installed this year, and that system is going to save lives. I elevated my concept of adding a risk analysis to the contractor bidding process. That's up at the state level right now being discussed. That is going to decrease these massive change orders that the city often pays. I talked about my peripheral enterprise zone concept to go around the TIFs to stimulate small business development and increase the number of small businesses that move into those areas. And we need to start thinking about new ways to use our economic development personnel and resources. Connectivity. That's one way that we can create the new entrepreneurial spirit that'll bring Racine back to the way that it was. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. So why should folks vote for me? Again, like I said, I have deep roots in Wisconsin and Racine. I've met I've gone around the district 3 times meeting people and have a deep sense of what people care about and what they want to see Racine become. My leadership experience, whether it's at the city with the Parks Board, whether it's at organizations like Interfaith Older Adult Caregivers, which have multi-million-dollar budgets, or whether it's at nonprofits or churches, has demonstrated amply my leadership experience. And then also service. I've worked and served in a number of capacities, from mentoring to programs with church, all to try to better the community. And between my roots here, my leadership, and my service, I think I'm the right candidate for the job.
Thank you. Ray, your turn for 1 minute.
Experience matters, and I have plenty of it. I've served on chairman of every committee on the county board except for one. I have been active in our community. I ran a Knights of Columbus basketball league for fifth graders for 5 years. We did fundraisers for these children. I'm out in the community, and I'm very accessible, and I have the experience to get the job done. I've yet to hear somebody tell me, you're doing a bad job. And I'm telling you that my experience will pay dividends if I'm elected again. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric? Your turn.
I think Racine's doing a good job. I'm not trying to get in there to throw a monkey wrench in everything that's being planned. I want the people to have more of a say in the voice in the city government. I think that should be first and foremost the taxpayers. I think common people want some common sense in some of these problems. I realize I'd be a rookie, but everybody was a rookie in the beginning. I think people that have been on, you know, I love the service that these guys that have 20, 30 years in city government and county government, it's great. We owe them a lot of respect. They did a lot of good things, but I think at some point in time, people need to move on. New people need to go in with, even if it's some crazy ideas, maybe out of the box. Gee, that's what works sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you. Finish up with you, Monty.
Thank you very much. Experience is important, and I too have a great deal of experience. I spent my entire adult life self-employed, had the ups and the downs, the good, the bad, the ugly. And what I have learned is experience is important. Even taking credit for things that you've done in the past is important, but what's more important is taking action now, and that is what I've done. My literature piece that's out on the desk there has a list of things that I've done, some of them on the county board. Each one of these talks about how I've taken action, not only on the idea and the initiative, but to see it through to the end. Successfully recruiting businesses on my own with no TIFs, with no incentive monies to Racine. People that are here employing folks, fighting burdensome sales tax proposals, and it goes on and on and on. You know, the money that we brought into Racine through some of the initiatives that I've led. So I encourage you to look at that. These are the reasons why it's important to elect experience to this board. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Monty. I want to thank you all for coming this evening, and thank you for your questions. I want to thank my staff for helping with this forum, but most of all, let's give a hand to the candidates for getting here and telling us about themselves. Thank you much.